Okay, alright. There's obviously a lot of confusion, so let me explain. In fact, I'll answer all of these questions in this video itself to help you decide whether to pull for her or not. But before that, we need to learn everything about her so that those questions actually make sense to you all. So let's start with this complete, comprehensive, full, detailed, thorough, all-in-one, definitive and exhaustive guide for Skirk. And I promise you that once you see this video, you will have no doubts whatsoever regarding her kit, weapons, team comps, artifacts, constellations and whatever else you can think of. But if you still have any questions after watching this video, then make sure to drop them down in the comments below and I'll respond to each and every one of you individually. But before we begin, let me just quickly say that if you have seen my last two videos on Skirk, then feel free to skip these parts of this current video as they are almost the same with a few minor changes. Now let's get the ball rolling and start with her general rotation. It begins with using her support abilities before switching to Skirk, then use her elemental skill followed by burst, normal attack string twice, charge attack, another normal attack string with an additional 4 to 5 normal attacks on top of that. Now I know most of you didn't register that, so I'm gonna have this rotation on screen while explaining her kit because that will make it easier to understand. And besides this, there is one more playstyle of hers which is called Burst Bot Skirk, and its rotation again starts off with using her support abilities before getting to Skirk, then use the whole version of her skill followed by burst, and then you spend rest of the time with any support character on field. And again, I'll have this rotation on screen too while explaining her kit. With all this being said, let's get right into it. Starting off with her elemental skill, which has two versions, tap and hold. So when you tap the skill button, Skirk gains 45 points of what we will call Batman points and enters a state which we will call the Dark Knight state, since her outfit goes dark in this state. It's exactly the same mechanic as for Rina, wherein her outfit changes based on her RK alignment. But anyway, coming back to Skirk. So while she is in this state, her normal, charge and plunge attacks are changed to cryo-infused attacks with increased AoE, and Skirk herself gains a lot of interruption resistance. To give you an idea of how much increase in interruption resistance this is, let me just say that Skirk would rather die standing in the middle of a Ruin Guard spin attack than get knocked back. And if you don't know, Ruin Guard spin attack is one of the strongest attacks in-game which sends all characters flying. But anyway, besides the cryo infusion and increased AoE, her burst is also changed to a special burst which we will discuss later. Another important thing to note is that Skirk stays in this state for 12.5 seconds or until all Batman points are consumed, and the rate at which she consumes points is 7 per second. But wait, if she consumes 7 points per second, then wouldn't that mean 45 points would be consumed in 45 by 7, which is 6.4 seconds? And well, you're totally right in thinking that. However, this is where her first passive talent comes into play. You see, when party members trigger any cryo reaction besides melt, which includes frozen, superconduct, cryo swirl and cryo crystallize, something called a void rift is formed on the field every 2.5 seconds for a maximum of 3 voids. And these voids look suspiciously like tacit bug. Now once Skirk absorbs these voids, she gains 8 Batman points per void. But how does she even absorb them in the first place, you ask? Well, she can absorb them via 3 methods. First is using her charge attack or the special burst while she is in the Dark Knight state, and second is holding the skill button. Speaking of which, let's discuss that. So when you hold the E button, Skirk gains 45 Batman points and starts flying around like Arlecchino while absorbing all voids nearby. So assuming you had 0 points and 3 voids on field, you'd gain 45 plus 8 into 3, which is 69 points. Now besides this, she has 2 more passives, with the first one increasing her normal attack and burst damage depending on how many cryo or hydro units are in the party. Now this passive essentially makes it so that you kinda gotta run her in freeze teams only, and that the mention of other reactions in her previous passive is a scam because you're never gonna be running her in those teams anyway. As for her final passive, this one increases the skill level of everyone in the party by +1, provided all party members are either hydro or cryo, and this effectively puts the final nail in the coffin for non-freeze Skirk teams. Now finally, let's discuss her burst, which like the skill has 2 versions, one for when she is in the Dark Knight state and one for when she isn't. Starting off with her non-Dark Knight burst, which requires her to have at least 50 Batman points to unleash a big AoE cryo attack. Now this attack's damage is enhanced further for every Batman point she has beyond 50 for up to 12 points, meaning 62 points in total. So while playing, all you need to do to use this burst at its maximum efficiency is hold E while there are at least 2 voids on the field, because that will gain her 16 additional Batman points totaling 61, and then you press Q for a big AoE cryo nuke. As for her other burst, it's like a 4-star burst since since it doesn't have a distinct animation, but it's the one you'll be using with her mostly. And this burst is the special burst we discussed before, as it is only activated when she is in the Dark Knight state. But what exactly does this burst do, you ask? Well, you see, it does two things. First, it will absorb whatever voids are nearby, and then based on how many were absorbed, it will grant a damage bonus to Skirk. Though being honest, the difference between damage dealt with 0 voids absorbed versus 3 voids is around 27,000 DPR, which means total damage over an entire rotation and not damage per second. So it's essentially negligible. And anyway, if you're doing a normal attack rotation perfectly, you will be absorbing 2 or 3 voids each time with her burst. So to summarize our entire kit, let's start from the top of our rotation once again. To begin by using your support abilities, which will generate at least 2 voids on the field by the time you switch to Skirk. Then press E to gain 45 Batman points and enter the Dark Knight state, changing her normal attacks to cryo-infused normal attacks and converting her burst into the special burst. Next, use this special burst to absorb all nearby voids, gaining either 16 or 24 Batman points depending on how many voids were absorbed, while also getting a damage bonus based on the number of voids consumed. Now begin spamming her normal attacks and complete her full normal attack cycle twice. At this point, if you had absorbed 2 voids with her burst, then there will be 3 voids on the field, with vice versa also being true. Now do a charge attack which deals damage to the enemy and absorbs all nearby voids, granting an additional 16 or 24 Batman points. After that, continue spamming her normal attacks until the Dark Knight state ends, which is typically one more full normal attack cycle followed by 3 to 4 extra normal attacks depending on your ping. And this rotation is the one you'll be doing with her mostly, as it will result in a lot higher damage than the burst bot Skirk rotation. Speaking of which, the beginning of this rotation is the same as the previous rotation, with using support abilities first to make at least 2 or 3 voids on the field by the time you switch to Skirk. Then hold the E button to float around for 1 second to absorb the created voids and follow it up immediately with a burst for a big AoE cryo nuke. After this, just switch to another character in the team and use them on field till you can repeat the rotation from the beginning. Having said that, this rotation is obviously suboptimal, as it will result in a lot less team DPS compared to the normal attack rotation, as this rotation's primary goal is to buff Skirk's burst damage to its maximum potential. And if you have been enjoying this video so far, then a sub to the channel would fill the void in my heart. And if you want to support even more, join the channel memberships to gain exclusive perks like directly DMing me on Discord or even a Genshin account review. Now, you know what guys, I lied. I lied about the fact that there are only 2 ways to play her when there are in fact 3. The third one is when you use her non-Dark Knight burst and the normal attack cycle in one rotation. But based on everything I have said, that shouldn't be possible, right? Well, you're 100% correct in thinking that. However, you lack critical info. You see, when you use her in Abyss, she starts off with max Batman points, which is 100, and because of this, when you get to her after using your support abilities, you could do her burst without holding E, cause like I said, you already have way over 50 Batman points. So you do her burst and then press E to enter the Dark Knight state, do a charge attack to absorb all voids on the field and start spamming normal attacks till you get another 2 voids on the field, which again, you absorb with a charge attack and continue this normal attack spam. So essentially, this rotation is only for the first time you use her in any Abyss floor and not a general rotation you can do anytime. Also, one important thing to note is that if you hold E right before the Abyss floor ends, then Skirk will carry over those remaining Batman points to the next floor. However, if she was in her Dark Knight state just before the floor ended, then she won't be carrying over any points. So, now that we understand her kit perfectly, let's talk weapons. And to no one's surprise, her signature is obviously the best in slot, as it provides 48% attack and 40% crit damage, which is really good. And currently, this weapon can only be used by her, as she is the only unit with 0 energy mechanic besides Mauvika. But other than this, you could also use 5-star alternatives like Haran, Primordial or Mist. Do keep in mind that if you have these 3 weapons, then the signature and C1 are almost equally better. However, if you are using weapons besides these, like Finale of the Deep, which will be the free-to-play standard used to rank other weapons, or Black Sword, or even some 5-stars like Uraku, Summit Shaper, or Absolution, then the signature weapon is more of an upgrade than C1. The full list of her weapon rankings is displayed on screen, but keep in mind these will vary heavily based on your team composition. Moving on to her artifacts. The top 2 contenders are Galleries or the Hunter set, with the former one giving her a 60% damage boost to normal attacks or the animated burst, and the latter giving her 36% crit rate. Now among these 2, which one is better? Well, to give you a one-line answer, it's dependent on the weapon. And what do I mean by that? Well, you see, both sets are pretty neck and neck with each other, with galleries being much better if Skirk is on her signature weapon or primordial jade cutter. As for the stats, the standard choices are what you are looking for, with attack percent sans, cryo damage bonus goblet, and crit rate or damage circular depending on your crit values. You can also use an attack percent goblet if you plan on running her in teams that have a lot of damage percent buffs but fewer attack percent buffs. This essentially means that teams with Furina, Citlali, Moalani, and Candice that provide damage bonuses but lack sources of attack percent buffs like Shenhe, Song of Days Past, TTDS, or Noblesse prefer attack percent goblet. However, if you are using her on the Hunter set, the cryo damage is better in general. As for the substats, focus on getting as much crit rate, damage, and attack as possible while avoiding stats like ER or EM as they are absolutely useless for her. With all that being said, is she the most violent? Is she the most diabolical? Is she the most dangerous? Is she the god of all gods and the ultimate meta breaker everyone was expecting? No, that she ain't. But she's still pretty strong. In fact, I would rate her as the second best DPS in the game after Mawika, because honestly,
can't no man knock me out. I'm tired of being humble. I'm tired of letting people think they got a chance.
But what holds Skirk back are her team building restrictions, which confine her to freeze teams only, and other archetypes can go to hell. So let's discuss the teams which will enable you to reach her max damage potential. Starting off with her best team, Cryo Queens and the Abyssal Diva. This team, consisting of Coffee, Shenhe, and Furina, is the most premier, top-notch, elite comp you can get for insane damage. In fact, if we disregard the fact that you need to spend $1,000 to get all the units, this team is doing more damage than the best new Village team in a single target scenario. However, since most players don't have the money to spend on getting units back to back, especially in this economy, you could also use the decaf comp with Charlotte instead of Coffee. But obviously, this team's damage will be much lower than the premium team, as Charlotte is more of a healer than a sub DPS. Now, if you don't have Shenhe, then you can also use the Domi Mommy comp with Yelan instead of Shenhe. And this team's DPS is equal to the Shenhe team, so you aren't really losing out on any damage. But what if you don't have Shenhe or Yelan? Well, in that case, you can use the Abyssal Granny comp with Citlali on Stroll, and this team's DPS is almost equal to the Yelan team while also providing a shield for Skirk, even though the shield is shit. So till now you must have noticed that Skirk is heavily reliant on Coffee and Furina. But what if you don't have those units? Well, in that case, you can literally just use any permutation and combination of Hydro or Cryo characters and you are good to go. For example, since we know that Skirk's main source of damage is normal attacking, you can use Yelan instead of Furina or even Xingqiu. But do keep in mind that those are the only two I would recommend as substitutes for Furina, because Skirk teams require at least one Hydro unit to enable freeze so that her kit functions properly. Now besides these two, you can also use co-op picks like Nilu, Sijuin, Ayato, or even Barbara or Kokomi on TTDS. But of course, like I said before, these teams will do a lot less damage than the premium team. As for the alternatives to Coffee, I am afraid that there aren't that many good ones, but I'd recommend Yelan, Citlali, Furina, or Charlotte. And if you don't have both Coffee and Furina, then mix and match all of the units I have mentioned till now while keeping at least one Hydro unit in the team to enable freeze. Now, one special comp I would like to mention is the ISO speed comp with Dahlia and Mika instead of Coffee and Shenhe. These two units provide a total of 40% attack speed for Skirk, which means you can do more normal attacks than usual, though it's more of a meme comp as its damage is not that significant. As for her other playstyle, the only team I would recommend for it is the Mona comp, as that will result in the highest burst damage, and that's literally the aim of burst bot Skirk rotation. And if you have been enjoying this video so far, then a sub to the channel would guarantee you a 50-50 win on the Skirk banner. And if you want to support even more, join the channel memberships to gain exclusive perks like directly DMing me on Discord or even a Genshin account review. So now that we are done with teams, let's discuss Constellations. Constellation 1 unlocks an additional cryo hit on the enemy for each void absorbed, and this damage is considered as charge attack damage. So on average, this provides a 20% overall damage increase over C0. Moving on to her second constellation, this one grants her an additional 10 points whenever her skill is cast, regardless of what version of the skill was used. On top of that, her animated burst damage is increased further for up to a total of 72 points. Or if you had just tapped the skill button and entered the Dark Knight state, then she'd have gained an additional 70% attack on top of the 10 extra points. Overall, this constellation gives an average 22% increase over C1. As for her third constellation, this one increases the level of her burst by 3, which in turn increases the damage dealt by her animated burst and also increases the buff provided by her special burst. All in all, it's a minor increase if you're doing her normal attack rotation, constellation cause the buff provided by her burst isn't anything substantial. But if you're doing her burst bot rotation, then it's a major increase. Moving on to her fourth constellation, which grants her 10, 20 or 40% attack bonus based on the number of cryo or hydro units in the party. Effectively, this adds around a 10% damage increase compared to the previous constellation. Constellation 5 just increases the level of her skill by 3, which means more damage from her cryo infused normal attacks, and it's a 16% damage increase over the previous constellation. As for her sixth constellation, this one grants her a stack of something called Sever each time she absorbs a void for up to 3 stacks. Now whenever she uses her animated burst after holding E, she'll deal an additional cryo coordinated attack for each severed stack she has. Or if you just tap E and start spamming her normal attacks, she'll deal an additional 3 cryo coordinated attacks on every 3rd and 5th hit of her normal attack cycle. Also, if you take damage while having severed stacks, the damage received is reduced by 80% while also unleashing 3 cryo coordinated attacks. Overall, C6 offers an 18% damage increase over C5 and a 125% increase compared to C0. Now, I'd say that her constellation breakpoints are C2, C5 and C6, as I feel those provide the most value of them all. With all this being said, should you pull for her or not? Well, that depends on a few things. First, do you like Skirk? If you do and don't care that much about damage numbers, then go ahead and pull her. But if performance does matter to you, then consider this. Do you already have both Coffee and Furina? If so, she is worth pulling. If not, then it's probably better to skip. Now, the only issue I have with her is the fact that she becomes absolutely useless against enemies which have an infused element like the Pyro Hypostasis, as her kit will literally stop functioning properly against those enemies. But none of these minor issues come close to the biggest issue I have with her, which is the fact that the PlayStation Blinks look best on her, but they can't be used on PC.